the Benton County Fair Board is the last two items under administrator at 9:05.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the agenda, amended agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the amended agenda. Any other discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. County board meetings are broadcast live and video recorded on YouTube. Please restrain from speaking from the audience area and come to the podium so that viewers can hear you. The county board observes the Roberts Rules of Orders for its meetings, so please obtain the county board's chair consent before addressing the county board. Public comments are generally reserved for open forum segment or public hearings. However, public comments on an agenda item may be allowed at the discretion of the board chair. As we begin today's meetings, please turn your cell phones off or turn them to vibrate. Thank you. Open forum, anybody back there?
Well, I don't think he signed in, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Do I need to sign in?
Nah, we're good.
We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's just sign out.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Brad Bergstrom here, Superintendent of Sauk Rapids Rice Public Schools. I wanted to come here this morning to express my gratitude and thanks to Sheriff Heck and in the Sheriff's Office for some help that they provided for us back in earlier in December. As you may be aware, we were dealing in early December with a social media threat, and we're unsure at one point where things were at. I reached out to Troy and asked if he and members of his department would be willing to come and be a presence around our buildings, both in Rice and in Sauk Rapids, and without hesitation, he said yes. And for a couple of days, they were there and present. I received a number of emails, as did members of the board, just from families appreciative of the fact that there was a presence there. I heard from our staff members that they felt much safer as a result of having that presence there, and just wanted to come and again express my thanks to Troy and the department for helping us out during this challenging time. Unfortunately, that seems to be kind of the norm these days for schools to have to deal with this, and we worked our way through it, and nobody was hurt. People felt much safer, and just wanted to come here this morning and express my thanks and my gratitude to the Sheriff's Office for coming and helping us out. And again, thank you very much for this. Appreciate it.
Great.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you, Brad,
Yeah.
very
Thank
much.
you,
And
Brad.
Troy,
We don't
thank you.
hear enough good things,
Well, in
in
my
this
line of
world.
work, I'm with you on that. So, when there's something that's positive, I really felt
Yeah.
obligated that it was the right thing to do. And I told Troy before the meeting, again, thank you. And just to have our staff and to have our families just feel that
Yeah.
much safer during a challenging time is really important. The safety of everybody is of the utmost importance. And for us to be able to do that, keep school going during a challenging time is great. I appreciate it. So again,
All right,
Thank you
thanks.
for taking the time, Brad. Appreciate that. Sheriff, too, thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank
Appreciate
you.
that, your department.
Nobody else is back there, I take it on open forum. Okay. Consent agenda, we have items 1 through 12. Does anybody wish for any of them to be pulled for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item 11, please, if I could.
Anything, any other items pulled?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a consent agendas items 1 through 11, or 1 through 10, and then 12.
Second.
There's, motion's been made and seconded to approve items 1 through 10 and 12. Is there any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Commissioner Johnson?
Right, Chris, I just was wondering if you could give us a very brief update on the overages on this project. I see that, for final payment, there was a few extra dollars there. I'm sorry to take you off guard on that. I had made
Yeah.
a note on my agenda to ask and forgot to ask you about it.
Oh, yeah, so for the benefit of everybody, this was the Foley Trail project along Highway 25. They received federal money, and then anything that the federal grant didn't cover was city of Foley costs. So once they began doing some work, they noticed some drainage issues in the project, and there was some additional grading and some additional topsoil that were brought in to try to help drainage. There was some ponding on the backside of the trails, what I recall from that. This project is somewhat old, and we just finally got final paperwork back from the contractor and clearance, so that's why the payment was delayed. But the work, the extra cost revolves around creating that, or correcting that drainage issue that came up during construction.
Very good.
So, and unfortunately, at the time of letting, the federal funds are capped, so all those additional costs were City of Foley cost, and they approved the change order before final approval and added to the contract.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to have that on the record. Thank you, appreciate that. All right, I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item number 11.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve consent agenda item number 11. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Before we go any further, just to let the rest of you board members know that at 10:30 I have to leave. So Commissioner Heinen will be taking over at that point.
Okay, thank
And
you.
or if we go through this quickly.
Or if we go through this. And I
think we
see
can
her
do
quickly
that.
just left the door, left the room. I'm sure he just stepped out for a little bit. See.
I think he's grabbing Roxanne.
Roxanne.
We
Okay.
could go right to Sheriff Hack.
I guess if we, you wanna move up, Sheriff? Oh, here he comes.
Let's do it anyways.
Let's do it, yeah.
I was just going to get Roxanne.
Okay.
Are we on the fee schedule thing?
Yes.
Yep.
Did you do the whole script on?
No.
Go right ahead and do that, and then hopefully
Okay.
by then she'll be here.
Sorry, Sheriff.
All right.
The next item on our agenda is a public hearing to consider the fee increase or fee schedule for for 2022. Before opening the public hearing, we will hear from county staff. Here she comes.
Do you have the agenda item?
Sure.
Okay. So we had just a couple of requests for changes to the fee schedule. Primarily in sign creation, the price of metal has gone up significantly, and so we are not even close to covering the cost of what it costs us to create a 911 sign for everybody. And so our proposal was to make it the same across the board, so whether you have a platted parcel or an unplatted parcel, or just purchasing a sign or a post, that we're at least covering our costs, and then tacking on just a small amount more than that, so that we don't have to come back here next year or the following year. And then the other change was increasing the building plan review for residential. So this is just the plan review fee from 50% to 65%. And this would make us more along the same lines of everybody else that's charging that fee. I don't think there's many out there charging below 65% plan review fee. Helps cover some of the costs that are associated with having a building official and enforcing building code.
And that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Roxanne.
I'll leave that up there for you.
And the other change on the fee schedule was removing the economic development related fees for loans. As again, we discussed, BEP is doing that work for us, and it's appropriate that they would collect those fees for loans and TIF and tax abatement, so those fees are removed. And that's all the changes we have then, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we've already heard from the applicant,
That's your
is
staff
the
report,
county.
yep.
We'll now open a public hearing. If there's anyone who wishes to address the county board on these agenda items, please come to the podium and state your name and address. If anyone wants to address, or if anybody's online, they can address us online too.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Final call for anyone wishing to address the county board. Seek final calls. Anybody out there? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. Are there any emails, letters, or other communications to be read?
No, sir.
Has the department received any concern from any state agencies, cities, or townships?
None received. No.
The county board will now have time for questions of the staff and discussion. As a reminder to the audience, public hearing is closed. Is there any questions or comments from board members before we take action on this item? No.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll move approval of the 2022 Benton County fee schedule as
Second.
presented.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the Benton County 2022 fee schedule as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Well, Mr. Chair, I know two board members have some time commitments this morning, so I'll move through these items pretty quickly. So that's somewhat deliberate, moving somewhat quickly. I believe the next item is consideration of the final 2022 budget and levy. So again, today's final, it represents final action on the 2022 budget and levy. So, Mr. Chair, I know we covered this quite extensively in the recent Truth of Taxation hearing, so I wasn't going to necessarily repeat all that information. I'd like just instead focus on the summary page, which is copied on the backside of the agenda item, and just mention a few things. And I'd ask Beth if you could simply incorporate this summary in its entirety into the minutes. So that goes into the record as the major points or factors in the final 2022 budget and levy. I'll just cover a couple of things. This represents a 5.9% levy increase in 2021. The only change from proposed levy, as you may remember from the committee of the whole, was we needed to add up $30,000 to the property management budget because of the higher cleaning contract. So again, that is the only change from the proposed budget and levy. The levy, of course, didn't increase. We just need to fund that out of fund balance. So that's where that's going to come from. I'd just like to focus on a few things that are in the middle of this page on the primary components of the 2022 levy increase. As you can see, about 1.4 million is related to compensation benefits. That is the 2.5% COLA, step increases, the effects of the class and comp study, and a 12% health insurance increase. So the vast majority of the levy increase is related to compensation benefits. You can see the board added in this this final budget, some new positions which are described below. We also restore some funding to highway for them to purchase their major equipment. We use some American Rescue Plan Act funding to bring the levy increase down. We use $671,000. That's due to revenue losses in inmate boarding, and then resources we received from the state of Minnesota from MnDOT for road maintenance and repair. We also use we have some revenue offsets from these human services positions. In fact, most of the human service positions are partially or fully offset by revenue. We also use some fund balance of $211,000 to bring this levy increase down. Again, you can see at the bottom, the total levy change is $1.2 million from 2021. So again, Mr. Chair, that's, just want to make a few comments and ask that the entire summary be included in the record. And so what you have for your consideration this morning is the levy resolution towards the back of this packet. And the statute asks us to adopt the levy first, and then the budget second. And again, those appear at the back of the packet.
Okay, you've heard, and we've hashed it. So you heard the two motions that we need?
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution setting the 2022 Benton County property tax levy at $21,412,944.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to adopt the proposed levy. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Go ahead.
Action item 2, adopt a resolution setting the 2022 Benton County budget as presented. All motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to adopt the budget as presented. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to salaries. So as we noted in the budget committee of the whole, it's a statutory responsibility of county boards to set the salaries of elected officials in the county board. The first resolution sets the salaries for the auditor treasurer, the sheriff, and the county attorney. The amounts that you see here represent the consensus from that committee of the whole, I believe. And let's see if my little spreadsheet is attached. I guess it isn't. But anyway, again, those amounts, I believe, if I recall correctly, represented essentially a 6% increase for each of those 3 elected officials. And again, the resolution is on the back of this agenda item.
Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution setting the 2022 salaries for auditor, treasurer, county attorney, and sheriff.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to set the salaries for the auditor, treasurer, sheriff, and the county attorney at roughly 6%. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much. Moving on, and as we noted earlier, it's the statutory responsibility of county boards to set the county board salary, and this amount on the resolution reflects a consensus from that committee of the whole, and that consensus was to keep the salary unchanged from 2021.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the resolution setting the 22 county board member salaries as presented.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the county board salaries as presented. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, moving on to per diem. State statute allows county board members to receive a per diem when they serve on any board or commission that's officially recognized by the county board. And doing so must be done by resolution, and that resolution also must be published. It was the consensus of the county board at that same committee of the whole to change the per diem from 60 to 70. It was acknowledged that we do a fairly extensive survey of about 15 counties, and we look at their salaries and their per diem, and the survey showed us the average of those other counties was about $70. So the board chose to move us to the average of that comparative group of counties from 60 to 70.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adopt the resolution setting the county board per diem rate for 2022 as presented at $70.
And I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the county per diem rate at $70. Of one note, that will also include all of our committee appointees.
We'll bring that action to you January 4th.
Okay.
To set for the boards and other boards and commissions
Other
like
boards.
Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment. We'll do that January 4th.
All right, thank you. So this is just for the county board members at this time.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All righty. Now move on to considering some reorganizational changes regarding the Land Service Department. With the pending departure of our Land Service Director, this topic was discussed at a recent committee of the whole about some reorganizations, essentially to bring department development within Land Services as one department of three divisions. It would be essentially what we're going to call Planning and Zoning, Assessor, and Recorder would be three divisions within Land Services. Bringing those together. I believe there was consensus and support to name our current Planning and Zoning Director as our Land Service Director over those three divisions. And also, we need, of course, to begin a recruitment for a new county assessor. Of course, all counties are required to have a county assessor who holds the senior accredited Minnesota assessor certification. So we need to begin that process. And part of this action includes asking you all to appoint two of your members to serve on a selection committee for a county assessor. So you can see I've got in this agenda item 3 distinct motions for you to consider this morning.
Okay. So motion number 1 is to approve the reorganization of the Department of Development with Land Services and to rename Department of Development, Planning and Zoning.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to do the force of Department of Development, Planning and Zoning, and the Department of Development with Land Services. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Motion number 2 is authorize the recruitment of county assessor position and name 2 county board members to the county assessors selection committee.
Looking for volunteers.
Mr. Chair,
Volunteer.
I would volunteer to step in and help.
I'd volunteer.
Okay, we have the 2 volunteers in Commissioner Kapinski and Commissioner Heinen.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to authorize the recruitment of the county assessor position and to name Commissioner Heinen and Commissioner Kapinski as members of the county board for the selection committee.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to authorize the recruitment of a county assessor and name 2 county board members to the selection committee in Commissioner Heinen and Commissioner Kapinski. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And I should mention is that we have a new assessor job description ready. Tessa from DDA has reviewed it and assigned a pay grade, and we are essentially ready to post it, so we'll
Oh,
get
nice.
this one.
Good
ASAP.
Great job.
Yeah.
And then we have motion number 3 is to appoint Roxanne Ockman as the Land Services Director effective January 8th and authorize a submission of updated legal service descriptions of the job to David Brown and Associates.
So moved.
David Drone.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to appoint Roxanne. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
congratulations. A little bit premature here, but thank you for stepping up.
And I'm sure you're ready for the ride.
Just
Thank
like
you.
us- Just like us all.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Congratulations.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Thanks, Roxanne.
And I think now we're moving on to a couple of minute items. One is the administrator's report, and there's 3 things I'd like to cover: the OSHA Emergency Temporary Standard, an update on the Foley High School property purchase, and then the interim
yeah.
county assessor issue.
We got one more.
We got,
We got one more first.
I have one more.
Consider the EDMS.
EMS?
EDMS management system.
Oh, you want to go to that one, Steve? He could come up and do that one, sure. And we'll go back to these then later. Come on up, Steve.
We're just following our
We're
script.
following the,
Nice try, Monty.
He was trying to save time, so.
yeah,
could
we
go
got
through
him on
his
the
stuff.
brush.
We got plenty of time.
Morning, Commissioners.
good morning.
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 Get this up here. All right, I am here today to present to you the recommendation by the EDMS committee for replacement of our old EDMS system. Just want to cover a few highlights, go over what was recommended, how we got there. In the packet, we have the on-base enterprise proposal from DataBank, which is our current on-base EDMS vendor. We have migration documents for Metafile, the on-base conversion for HS and the rest of the county. Those are the documents that currently live in the old system that are gonna need to be transferred over. We met with departments and went through and identified things that need to come with. So we have a pretty good handle on how many of those are. There's also the new licensing structure for DataBank in Highland. Highland is the vendor of on-base, and DataBank is our preferred vendor that we work with to support the system. Biggest change there is their licensing changed in October from regular standard licensing to a subscription base, which allowed us an opportunity to expand at a lot cheaper rate for the rest of the county, which I've outlined in some of the summary. And then we've got the EDMS summary and the cost proposals that I will review briefly here. Just want to start, is there any questions with any of the material?
We're supposed to understand it all.
I tried to do my best in the EDMS summary to just kind of explain where we are today, where we're going. So, just briefly, EDMS is a document management system, allows people to scan, store, retrieve. We have 2 systems. We have OnBase, which was implemented in HS in 2013. We have an older system, Metafile, that was put in on the early 2000s. 2002. Thank you, Monty. And that one is proprietary and aged out. So going forward, we reviewed both of those systems and decided that it didn't make a lot of sense to entertain another full enterprise EDMS system on top of what we already had. With human services being fully implemented in OnBase, we took the approach of looking at that and vetted it out as expanding and creating it to be the main system for the county. I won't cover all this stuff, but the three biggest things for, that we looked at as a committee, which included, most of the departments, I think there was about 17 members, some of them are online today and in the audience, were the licensing and support costs, professional services, for data migration, and professional services for the building design and implementation into the departments. We considered the following. If human services, the big thing for them is EDMS and on-base aren't going away for them. They're gonna continue to invest in it. So, leveraging that investment, they're looking at another 19,000 in additions, to expand into that system. And then with the new cost and the EDMS proposal, we're looking at, when you add those costs together, it's about a wash. We looked at the IT spend, how much extra, resources and staff it would take to support 2 full systems rather than just one. So the conclusions, recommendations from the committee were to expand on-base as our primary EDMS solution. And then I'll just take a look here at the 5-year investment. We have on-base here. These are the new numbers. Human Services pays about 27,000 already of this. So to expand to the rest of the counties, about another 21. We currently already invest in our current system about 23,000. So the additional software costs are kind of a wash there. You'll notice that some of the implementation costs are a little higher. So this is on-base. And then when you move down to Laserfish, you've got these costs here. They're a little bit lower, but when you look at the total 5-year spend, you're looking at one system, which is basically just moving all the on-base. That's the same numbers as up here. And then if you were to add another system and support, you've got these numbers. So you'll see additionally every year it's a little bit more expensive, and then you end up with a higher number in the long run there. So that's kind of the quick review of what we've done, and we're just looking for an approval, and any questions, I'm happy to entertain.
Any questions for Steve? I guess one question I have is, them numbers, are they concrete, this, through 2023, 24?
Yes, so with the
26.
with the on-base proposal, you'll see here that they froze the first 3 years of the subscription licensing for us being a current customer, and that's kind of a perk they gave us.
Okay.
Typically, it's a 3% increase for any subscription licensing. So yes, these numbers are all solid here, and that includes
Okay.
human services spent today and the addition of as many licenses we need for the rest of the departments.
So they froze human services too? With this?
Yep, so when we move to this new licensing standard, that'll all be frozen, and that they won't incur that 3% increase every year.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one quick question, Stephen, maybe you have it in your report, and if you do, sorry, I missed it.
Sure.
What do you see as the life of on-base? I mean, are we 5 years out here, is it a 10-year, a 15-year deal we're gonna be looking at, or what's
It's
the life of it? I mean,
It's one of the leaders in EDMS, so document management is a huge thing for counties. It's heavy paper intensive. I see the lifespan of that continuing indefinitely.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair? If I read and understood you correctly, the fees, we're already paying them. It's just a matter of now it's a new upgraded system, correct?
Yep.
And it stays the same as we currently are paying out another 3 years, which if that's the case, you guys did a great job.
Yep, yeah, our current vendor stepped up to the plate for this, and the two biggest things were HS's investments in the future, and what's the other thing, and the licensing model change, which it made it a lot more affordable for us to expand at our own pace.
Great.
Great job.
Yep, thanks for your work on that.
Agreed.
We're dropping the metal file and using on-base, and was there one other?
Yep, so we currently have Metafile. We're gonna migrate out of that system to on-base for the county. And the other system you see in here was just a comparative, that was Laserfish. We just kinda wanted to look at the market a little bit, do some comparison to see what it would cost to have support 2 systems, and it just didn't make sense. Laserfish is probably one of the least expensive of the enterprise systems, so we thought that would be a good one to compare to.
Okay, so we're using the on-base, though.
Yeah, correct, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the EDMS project forward as recommended by the EDMS committee, and it's funded by a capital improvement plan for a board signature and with the attached documents.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. for the EDM,
Yes.
EDS, system. I'll get it right here, yeah. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
You kind of put it in our terms a little bit, hey?
Did my best.
Let it snow, let it snow,
Hey.
let it snow.
So we're back to, this is an informational item. First on the OSHA Emergency Temporary Standard, or ETS. So as you may have read in the news, is a district appeals court reversed the injunction that had been placed on the ETS. So actually, technically, we should be implementing it now, technically. But if you may also read in the news, is the U.S. Supreme Court is going to take up this matter on January 7th. So there's a possibility it could be stayed or completely undone. I guess we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court on January 7th. Nevertheless, though, is we do need to move forward and get ourselves ready to implement it. Because if the Supreme Court allows it to stay in place, there's, for example, one of the first key dates for implementation is January 7th. So as it's written, by January 7th, we should have obtained evidence of vaccination on anyone who's been vaccinated at that point by January 7th. So my intention is to bring an ETS policy to you January 4th. So we obtained a model policy off the OSHA website and are customizing it for us. But the plan is to bring that policy to you January 4th. So it's interesting is that, this policy actually is essentially a vaccination mandate, but employers can allow testing as an alternative to vaccination. So unless you tell me otherwise, my intention is to bring a policy to you that allows the testing alternative. Is that reasonable to assume that that's acceptable?
Mr.
Allows
Chair,
the
Monty,
te-
who's paying for the testing?
The ETS does not require employers
Correct.
to pay for testing.
Correct.
So I intend to bring a policy to you which would say the cost of testing is going to be the employee's responsibility. Now, I understand some information I've read from AMC's attorney on this issue is most likely that issue probably will get litigated and the courts will eventually decide who has to pay. The impression I'm getting is that this could be an enormous cost for employers. So I would urge you to at least initially not accept that cost and the employee would pay that cost. I should mention is right now, if I go in to get a COVID test right now, let's just say CenturyCare, they're going to submit that bill to our health insurance, which is required by current federal law to pay it. So effectively, the county and employees through our health plan are paying for these tests now because it's required.
And effectively,
And,
we're going
and
to.
that's right. So there's no out-of-pocket cost for the employee. You don't see the bill for it. Our plan, though, is still getting the bill. So it's being essentially paid for. Now, at some point, that temporary federal provision could go away, and then it's going to be left in the air who pays. And
Well, and I think it's fair to say that eventually we're going to see it in premium increases. We're going to
Yeah.
have to.
Right.
We already seen a 12%
Not,
this
it's
year.
not free,
Right.
so
Yep.
somebody's paying the bill.
And if it's another 12%, it's employees that are gonna be paying it along with the
Yeah.
county.
So, anyway, this is just a heads up, is that a policy will be coming to you January 4th with some of those key provisions that will allow, again, the testing alternative. The county wouldn't necessarily pay for it. If it becomes in other words, if our plan stops paying for it, we would expect employees to cover the cost of testing. It's interesting, maybe some of you folks that if you know of someone who's used one of those over-the-counter test kits that you can buy from Walgreens. Interesting enough, those are not acceptable.
Wow.
It has to, a self-administered, self-read test is not acceptable. It must be essentially a test administered by a medical professional and a lab test. So that's one thing we're going to point out really right from the get-go is that those kinds of tests are not acceptable. So
How often do we have to test?
Once a week.
Once a week?
It's weekly.
'Cause I
Weekly
just heard
tests.
on the way in this morning that the NBA is testing twice daily.
wow, right.
Yeah.
one of the challenging parts of the ETS is that if an employee does not provide you with test results, we're required to remove them from the workplace.
Okay.
It's a pretty drastic step. Hopefully there won't be any problems with employees accessing tests, getting test results promptly. And so we'll see. My worry is that the testing infrastructure is going to be bombarded with test results as now hundreds of, millions of employees across the country are now needing to get tested, and the labs are overwhelmed. So it's interesting, if you read the FAQs from the OSHA, they assure us that adequate testing capacity exists out there. So I hope that's correct. I really do.
Mr. Chair. Monty, with the, if we have to remove somebody with the unions that we deal with, is that at their cost or is that county cost?
As I read this, they would be removed, and essentially they'd be put on unpaid leave.
Right.
Until such time as they provide us with a negative test result,
If
And-
they,
and-
go ahead.
so-
If they don't provide us with a negative test results, then we have to remove?
It's
We're
a 10-day
we're required by the ETS to remove them from the
Okay.
workplace,
until they provide that
right, the
test.
negative test result,
So I've been researching this too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I thought it was January 10th was the date.
January 10th is, again, the
Very
date
good.
but basically what I've seen from OSHA is that, again, we're supposed to be implementing it now because the stay has been lifted. But OSHA said they will not pursue any form of enforcement until January 10th.
And or till in February, the first week in
And that's,
February.
and excuse me, the January 10th deadline is for obtaining
Implementation.
evidence of vaccination.
Correct.
The February deadline is when you must begin the testing process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The testing process deadline is about a month later.
Right.
When you've got to put in place and start doing the weekly testing. So, our goal is certainly to provide employees with a listing of available and acceptable test locations and options. But it's going to be up to them to schedule those, go get them. And I should mention too is that there's no requirement the employer gives employees paid time to go get tested. You are required to give the employee paid time to get vaccinated and recover from the effects of vaccination, but no paid time to actually go get tested. Clearly, you can see there's an enormous bias in this standard to move people in the direction of being vaccinated. Clearly,
Right.
that's the objective. So,
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
you
find
know,
the bias a little overreach. Yeah,
I'm sorry?
Well,
I find the bias overreach on people that are not being vaxxed, and it's more punitive. So if it's going to be covered, they should be covering everything.
I should mention, we have not determined whether or not elected officials are subject to this. Johanna is researching that issue. We have not seen a definitive answer whether elected officials are subject, so.
Well, that would really be a contradiction of if
Like
they're not
leadership.
required. Yeah, of leadership and everything else. That would be like, wow. When you look at our scope in general of the whole country, if they're not requiring the people that make the laws.
to abide by.
Well,
That is correct. I
We
agree.
hope to get an answer for you that
Yeah.
by January 4th.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
But that also would be a board's decision on elected officials, so.
My impression reading FAQs is that employers can impose their own vaccination or testing mandates.
Correct.
You can choose to. There's
Correct.
nothing that prohibits you from doing that.
Right.
So you could, if you wanted to, voluntarily be a part of this. That's up to you, so. So it's a preview of coming attractions with the ETS, and we'll of course be watching what happens with the Supreme Court, if there's any sort of stay on this. So, but we're forging ahead with the policy and so on.
And we're gonna find out in the next couple of months, there'll be other areas that are gonna be doing that too. They're already talking about airports and everything else.
Yeah.
Be mandated to get on an airplane.
Yep.
That'll be
We
coming
were just
in next.
talking about that last night on the news.
Yep, that'll be coming in the next month.
Well,
They're putting pressure on everybody.
right now, if you go to Canada, you're mandated to get a test
Yep.
before, when you get off the plane.
Yep. So,
Okay, well, let's move on.
Interesting.
So, quick update on the Foley High School property. So, let's see here. I've given Brian Intertech the go ahead to begin the phase one. I have a listing from Chris, of other companies that could do phase two, so I will get a quote on phase two. I don't have an impression right now from Brian when the phase one will be done, but I'll let you know when I hear something. We missed the deadline to be on the January City of Foley Planning Commission. Our surveyor, Jay Whitstock, was working out some boundary issues with Foley's Fifth Avenue. That's a street that goes by this ALC. There was some confusion about the actual boundaries and the right-of-way associated with that street. I believe those have been corrected with Jay, and we have a final certificate of survey, but we missed the deadline for the January Planning Commission meeting. I'll do my best to get on the February City of Foley Planning Commission. And again, that's for the rezoning to the business district. Let's see, what else?
And at that point in time, Monty, who would be approaching the planning and zoning?
I would attend that meeting and represent the county on that matter. I have the signed application from Mr. Sabania, so it's essentially it's ready to go. I just needed to have that final certificate of survey, and I got that a few days ago. So that is almost in place to do the rezoning part. I think that is it. You know, Michelle's been working on a purchase agreement for us. One thing that was holding that up was getting the purchase agreement and the resolution was a final legal description from Jay. So I think we're quite ready now to bring you the resolution January 4th to set in motion the purchase. And again, at some point, we'll have a purchase agreement as well.
I'm assuming that purchase agreement will be on contingency of what we find in everything else in that
Absolutely.
property.
Yeah.
There's two major contingencies, rezoning and the environmental issue. If for example, the environmental survey discovers contamination, essentially
We're
all
done.
bets are off and we pause and we decide, do we pursue any sort of cleanup? Do we pursue renegotiating a purchase price? So exactly, those two major caveats are in the purchase agreement.
Thanks.
And I'll do my best to keep Mr. Sabani updated. He's worked with us. I know we asked him to fill out a so-called well certificate. I sent that to him. He filled it out, returned it. So we're moving along. So, last thing, interim
Mr.
county
Chair?
assessor.
Yes.
Monty, just one quick question on that. If there is something that's found, I just wanted to get this on the record too. If Mr. Sabania, if we find something over there, does he gotta mitigate that even if the county doesn't move forward?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Brian can answer that. I would imagine at some point he would be very much obliged to do so. Otherwise, the property is not marketable.
Correct.
If he ever wants to sell it, he probably would have to do something.
Okay.
I mean, just practically speaking, is no one would ever buy it then.
I didn't know if he had to do it within a certain amount of time
I'm not
or
sure if
something.
he's legally required to. I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know the answer to that, sorry.
And that would be up for discussion too, though, between the seller and the buyer, because there are grants
I'm sure
for
it's all
land
negotiable.
cleanup too. So we still have different avenues to approach
Yep.
on this.
Brownfield site.
What?
Brownfield site.
Alrighty.
Possibility.
Interim county assessor, Steve Bambricker has agreed in principle to serve as our interim county assessor. I hope to have a formal professional service agreement to you January 4th. And then he would assume that role essentially January 8th as our interim county assessor. He's agreed to do that essentially just like he did 3 years ago at the same hourly rate. The only difference, I think, this time, as Steve said, he really prefers to do as much as he can remotely as possible, and that's fine, in my opinion. So I greatly appreciate Steve stepping up and willing to help us through this transition. So again, that'll be on your agenda. Assuming Steve is okay with the agreement I just sent him, that'll be on your agenda January 4th.
And that was a smooth transition last time too,
It
so.
was very, yeah. Of course, Steve was for many years the City of St. Cloud assessor and now does contractual work as a local assessor. He does, for example, City of Sauk Rapids. I think he does Foley and maybe a township or two. So he has a vast experience in this field. He can just step right in and keep things going.
Mr.
just
Chair,
very
Monty,
well.
just to clarify, this would be an independent contractor situation. He would not be an employee.
Exactly. He would be paid as a contractor. Yes, exactly. Yep.
I thank him for stepping up.
Yeah, for sure.
I express my sincere. That's- Okay, I think that's it.
Oh, you got one more.
One more,
Or Fair
I have
Board.
one more.
Fair Board,
Fair board.
Benton County.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fair Board. Commissioner Heinen brought this to our attention, is the Fair Board is possibly interested in in Benton County Board representation to the Fair Board. It sounds like the Fair Board is going through a lot of transition right now. I want to be, discreet here in how I describe this, but a lot of transition. And I know current Fair Board Treasurer Mary Otsby, I think, had a conversation with Commissioner Hine about the possibility of inviting a county board member to be a representative to the Fair Board. I spoke with her myself last week, and she kind of gave me the dynamics and some of the things that are going on. A few things I can add. So she sort of just either possibly a county board member would be either a voting member or perhaps an ad hoc member. They meet once a month. Let's see here. They meet the third Tuesday of the month at 7 at the fairgrounds. If you're thinking about a time commitment, they do have an annual meeting in November. She said there's currently 101 members of the Act Society. Those officially, those 101 members would have to then approve the ultimate appointment. Although she said they do have like a nominating committee, and the only way you can be submitted for a ballot is to be approved by the nominating committee, which would be members of the board. She did say up to this point, in order to be a member of the board, you had to be a member of the Act Society, and you have to serve 2 years as a volunteer at the fair. So it sounds like, well, there might be a possibility that they could potentially waive that, possibly, and make some changes to the bylaws. But right now, currently, that's the requirement, is Act Society member and a 2-year volunteer. So I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Heinen, I've said enough, though.
Well, thank you, Monty. Yes, I've been in conversations with Mary and a couple of the other board members, actually about 3 or 4 conversations already, and they thought it was very important that the county got involved with this because of the transition and everything that is going on right now. And they're also looking at the bylaws too, changing the bylaws too, to make sure that, if they so choose, that they could have a county commissioner on the board, as a voting member.
Unless they've changed their membership to the Ag Society, it's $5.
That's correct, and they also spread,
Because I think, actually, I've been a current member
Yeah.
for a long time.
and they also expressed concerns that they should probably have one on the Ag Society committee too. And I says, well, we'll talk about that another day. But this is open for discussion, and I think, we can just open it up to a volunteer. But we really don't have to make this appointment until our first meeting in January anyway, when we set our committee assignments.
You could do that, yeah, you bet, right, that'd be a good time to do that. I
So,
think just kind of toss it out there and see if there's
Yep.
any interest. My impression talking to Mary is, I don't think we should sugarcoat this. It sounds like this could be a challenging, appointment.
this is serious.
And especially now, and could, result in a fairly decent time commitment. So I wouldn't want to mislead you and say, oh, this will just be a very light endeavor. I think it could be a pretty challenging appointment, so.
I would have to agree.
But in a good way. I wouldn't want to, I don't want to say this negative way.
Right.
I think Mary got the impression that a county board member would be a great stabilizing, positive influence on that group. So I think it was a very complimentary thing to you all that she's suggesting a county board member.
Yeah, and she also expressed the concerns that the first year will be the hardest with all the implementations that they have to go through moving forward.
I've been involved with the county fair since all of my adult life, pretty much. And this is one of the better of 5 county fairs in the state as you travel throughout the state. I mean, this is a great county fair, large participation, great, you got a massive 100,000 people to draw from. And there's a lot of counties when you go to other county fairs that envy what Benton County has got as a county fair. But it's a commitment on behalf of being on that board, during that especially during the fair week and the planning that goes into it. So,
So why don't y'all think about it, and then we can talk about it more on January 4th?
Perfect.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Now you're done.
now you're done?
I'm done.
All right. Now we're gonna move on to Sheriff Heck.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
I will, as always, attempt to be brief. So you have an agenda item before you asking for your approval of an amendment to our current 2021 contract between the county and Centricare for the provision of jail medicine in our jail. As I noted in the agenda item in October, I was before you bringing a 3-year contract that I thought would solidify our relationship with Centricare into the near future. After this approval of that contract and prior to Centricare signing it, we ran into some differences in how we were going to provide care and how we were going to manage our employees and the providing of that care in the jail. In working with Centricare, Michelle Meyer and I attempted to work our way through these differences, and in the end, it came to the point of telling them the things that they wanted to accomplish, we could not accomplish in the way they asked of us. So we proposed a way that could get accomplished, and that was not satisfactory to them, and they ultimately told us that they did not wish to sign the 3-year contract, which would have then left us without a jail medical provider come January 1st. In light of that, they recognize the need that we have to have somebody in the jail here as we transition to a new provider. So they've agreed to continue on as our medical provider through March 1st as an end date, which will give us time to negotiate a new contract with the superseded medical provider and get them up and running. So I'm before you today asking you to sign the already signed agreement from Centricare, solidifying this relationship to continue for 3 months into the new year.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Troy, so are you looking at 2 different providers right now at this time?
We're in negotiation with one provider. We've got a contract probably about 75% done.
Okay. And we won't have further issues like we're having right now with Centricare? All of that information will be, or I'm trying to put it correctly. We won't run into the same issues that we're running into now with Centricare?
I don't believe
With the
so.
provider?
This is a provider that's basically their business is providing jail medicine. They're very familiar with kind of the things that a county can and cannot do. So I don't anticipate running into the same issues. We've had ACH as a provider we're talking to. We've had them in the past, and they did a fine job for us when we had them in our jail before.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Sheriff, with it being about 75% done, I don't know if you can share this, but what are the costs looking at comparatively?
They're within a few $1,000s of what Centricare wanted.
Okay.
The one cost that we're gonna have to figure out yet is, as I had mentioned previously when we talked about this, we have to purchase an electronic medical records management system. I've been looking at some of the special funds, some of the reserve funds we have over in the jail, and I think that the inmate welfare fund will accommodate those one-time costs and those ongoing costs. So I believe we've got that managed as well.
Perfect.
Those are resources that come from, for example, commissary purchases, phone purchases. I don't remember the current balance. There's 40, I don't know. I shouldn't even cite a number, but there's a good balance in there, which,
It's north of $100,000 right now.
Okay, there should be plenty.
Mr. Chair, Troy, in regards to that system, is that system something that can be used in the future for potentially a different provider? If you get that way, or are they very proprietary to each provider?
I believe they're a proprietary product, and you're gonna run into that with any medical provider that comes in here. You know, Centricare has their proprietary product, ACH has theirs, Mend has theirs.
Okay.
So are we the only county of the 3 counties they service having trouble, or do you don't know that?
I've not heard of any other issues. They have different models in the other counties they service. For example, Stearns has a much larger budget, and Centricare is a much more encompassing of all the aspects of the medical providing over there. So they don't have the same issues we had where Centricare is providing part of the care and our staff is providing a larger
Okay.
part than Stearns.
Thanks for clarifying that. So,
Thanks for the roller coaster ride on this. I know it wasn't you, but it's definitely been up, down, and everywhere.
Yes, it has.
So,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve and direct the chair to sign the amendment for the 2021 Centricare Jail Medical Contract as presented.
Second.
Second.
motion been made and seconded to sign the extension to March 1st of 2022 for the jail medical. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll reassess the county board and turn it over to Commissioner Heinen for Human Services Board.
All right. We'll call the Human Services Board to order. Anything to add to the agenda, Bob, that, what we have in front of us?
Additions.
Entertain a motion, please.
So moved to approve the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent agenda item 1 and 2. Does anybody want 1 or 2 pulled?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes. Bob, request approval for renovation of the public health trailer.
Yes, thank you. We purchased a trailer about a year and a half ago with initial COVID funds with the intent of coming back later in the process to implement phase 2, which would be to outfit the trailer with, making it essentially a mobile lab with the ability to do some things like dental varnish clinics, dental health screenings, and attend community events with CT&C. So those are some of the programs. With the idea that we are not currently open, it allows us to be able to go to different places, to be able to provide these services. And one of the other things that was mentioned was specifically the Benton County Fair. That allows us the opportunity of having our mobile lab on site for anything that we would want to use it for the state fair. So I think there's some benefits to having the phase 2 done. The funds are COVID funds, so it's not something that the county would have to pay for. We would use the remaining balance of our grant, or not the remaining balance, but we'd pay for the $20,000 renovations. And we would use those COVID funds. As you can see, I believe that there was a diagram of what the trailer looked like, what we were going to do. And then before that was a listing of all the things that we wanted to have done. So I would ask that the board approve these expenditures of the COVID funds.
Bob, I have a question. So we bought the trailer in 2020. At that point in time, what was the reasoning for not doing what we're doing now?
We had limited funds. I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to use this trailer as, first of all, with storage, but the idea of being able to have a mobile lab was always something that we thought we should do eventually. And I don't know exactly why we didn't do it at that time. Maybe it was limited funds or whatever. But
I think I can add is we used CARES funds and we had so little time to do it. We just had
Oh,
to buy
that's
it
right.
quick.
Yeah.
I mean, we had, what, a couple, 3 months? It was just such a quick turnaround time. So I could see at the time, there was a time to think about this enhancement. It was just get the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Monty. That's correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chair, Bob, can you walk me through the process just quickly about, is this something that property management hooks up the county vehicle to, pulls it to a site that you want to use it?
Yes.
Or are your employees dragging this thing around, or what's the process?
Well, I don't know. I know that I went and took the county vehicle to pick it up and purchase it. So
Okay.
whether or not my staff would
Subsequently, property management has used their pickup and they have delivered it, for example, over to the Sauk Rapids Government Center and so on. That's been property management doing that. I don't think we'd want other folks driving the pickups. No.
Okay, thank you.
That's a very good point. I would have to
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
And that's not an issue at all. I don't think most of our staff would want to pull that around. So.
Sure, and I'm sure with Jeff, you can coordinate that pretty easily, so that's,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, anything else for Bob? We know what's in front of us. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the renovation request for the existing public health trailer.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Bob. It's passed. Is there anything else in front of us, Bob?
I
Anything
don't
you
have
have?
anything else unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Bob?
Last Monday wasn't enough?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Bob.
Bob.
Appreciate it. This time we'll adjourn the Human Services Board and turn it over to the board chair.
Well, I'll hear from Chris Bird, Highway.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
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 I will do my best to be quick, but I'm not known for being that. The first item I have before you is to consider a resolution of support for the City of Rice Transportation Alternatives Grant. For those that don't know, this Transportation Alternatives is a federal funding grant application. Anytime there's an entity like Rice who has a population under 5,000, they need to have the sponsorship of the county. Basically, we're saying that we agree to sponsor this program. We're going to help make sure that they spend the funds correctly. So there's an accompanying resolution to the agenda item where it specifies that they're going to come up with any local match. It's going to be City of Rice funds for any local match required of the grant, and they're agreeing to maintain the project if they're successful in receiving the grant amount. This is the same project that they've submitted in the past, this same grant application, just for a new year. They've been unsuccessful in getting grants for this trail. I pulled the map out of previous applications. This is what they're wanting to apply for, their Meadow Trails on the east side of Highway 10. There's our County Road 2 coming through here. This is even an old aerial photograph. I think anybody who's familiar with this area knows that this Fox Meadows development, I think, is full now. There's lots and built on, or there's houses and all the lots built in now. So they'd like to get a trail constructed that connects to existing sidewalk infrastructure along R2 that goes under Highway 10 and would therefore connect all these residents to downtown Rice and probably more importantly to the elementary school there north of our County Road 2. So I know the clerk would have liked to have been here. I talked to her this morning. I think she talked to you,
Yeah.
Commissioner Pop, too. Being a small office, her office called in sick, so she's having to man the office and provide public service up there in the city and couldn't make it today. So it's just asking the board to sign on to the resolution, saying that we're agreeing to be the sponsor if they're successful in getting this grant application.
Commissioner Heinen?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I just want clarification, paragraph 3, as a county engineer, is recommended that the county negotiate an agreement with the city, stipulation with what participation is with the cost and staff time. Are they fully aware of that there could be additional costs from the county given to them?
This is similar language. It's been in similar resolutions in the past applications submittals, so I believe they are. And that would be, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another point of clarification. If they are successful in receiving this grant, there would be a subsequent agreement between the county and city to specify that. So
I just don't want any
Surprises?
issues we've had in the past with the city of Rice about this. I just want this to be known ahead of time.
This is the same application that they've submitted in the past.
Well, that's correct, but they never received it though. And if they do receive it this time, they've got to know that there will be some added cost to this.
Right, and I think we covered that last time too, that there's cost to the county when you receive it.
yeah, just another point of clarification, because if they are, the federal funds would come to Benton County and then our agreement, I've learned we can do one of two things. We could hold the construction contract like we did with the city Foley Trail we just did recently. Or we could write the agreement that they have the contract with the contract, they go through their letting. But we'd have to just be very clear in our agreement of what all the federal requirements are. There's always some strings that come attached to federal money. And then so there's some, either way you look at it, there would be some administrative costs to the county to administer those funds either way. And I think that's what Commissioner Heinen is alluding to make sure that they knew that I think what the desire is that we'd seek reimbursement from the city for any administrative costs that the county has.
Yeah,
That is
Mr.
correct.
Chair,
yes.
how long have they been applying for this?
Researching it for the, I think as back as 2018, maybe even before that. This transportation alternatives is a very competitive process. There's not nearly enough federal money set aside for all the projects. And in 7W, Commissioner Johnson knows this, we had a recent meeting discussing this. Rice is competing with cities like Monticello, Elk River, St. Michael for the same type of projects. I think the last time this was submitted, there was 6 to 7 times the amount of money requested than what was available. So,
It's too bad they don't have a school on that side
Yeah.
of Highway 10, because
Yeah.
then they could get the safe routes to school.
Yeah, but it's, there's less people in Fox Meadows than there is west of Rice.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just saying.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a great project. I hope this funding does come through, so I'll make a motion to support City of Rice Transportation Alternatives Grant application.
Second.
motion been made and seconded to support the City of Rice Transportation Alternatives Grant application. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we move on.
all right, what's the next one? Okay, so kind of along the same lines, although it's not
Monty?
the same grant program, it is federal money. It's that time of year. So I'm working on a federal grant through the St. Cloud APO. This is the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. So we have a project identified in our 5-year plan of a full-depth reclamation on CASA 3, basically from Mayhew Lake Road within Sauk Rapids. We would like to carry the project all the way up to Popple Creek. That's the logical termini from an engineering standpoint. The interesting part of that is that the APO boundary stops here at our County Road 44. So it could be a good candidate to receive some surface transportation block grant programs through the APO, although only the portion of the project within the APO boundaries would be eligible. So I'd like to submit that to a grant, and keeping that in mind with the project costs, the project within the APO boundary, I'm estimating about $3.3 million to do a full depth reclamation of that project. 80% of that would be more than what the APO would receive in 1 year. So trying to be strategic and make it competitive with our neighbors to the west in Stearns County and competing with Sauk Rapids and St. Cloud and Waite Park, I tend to submit the application requesting about $2 million of federal money. And this would be available to us in 2026. That's when the federal money would be eligible. The remainder or the balance of the project costs would be state aid funds. We'd pull out of our state aid allotment.
Mr. Chair, just a quick definition for those of us that have a short memory, Chris. Difference between a full-depth reclamation and a reconstruction.
Oh, yeah, so this one, we're just going to grind up the existing pavement, mix it with the gravel that's below it, and then repave it.
Okay.
This project was graded and reconstructed in 1995, around that time frame. It received a maintenance patch overlay in 2008. We were hoping that it would make it 10 years, and we're past that. So it already has the graded width. It has gravel shoulders, wide gravel shoulders. So a reclaim would address the pavement condition, because it's in fair to poor pavement condition today. We'd put new pavement and pave the shoulders at that time.
That's a great
Thank you.
idea.
And also the entrances too, coming onto the road?
Yeah, we would, residential entrances, we would pave. Our typical practice has been if there's multiple entrances to a parcel, we'd pave one of them.
Yep.
And we'd discuss that with the landowner.
And so culverts were done back in.
Correct. We have the benefit, this section of roadway, the center line culverts were put in as concrete. I believe the concrete ones are in still good condition. We wouldn't replace those, so we don't have to excavate in the road bed. The entrance culverts are another thing. They were metal. They're probably due to be replaced. And that's pretty typical for a full depth reclamation project.
Okay.
We replaced the entrance culverts, but the center line culverts are still good.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval of submittal of the CASA 3 full-depth reclamation for possible federal funding.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to apply for, solicit federal funds for local matching funds for CASA 3. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So now our APO rep. Mr. Kipinski
We'll
has-
be working closely on this one.
Okay,
Yeah, I should have mentioned the grant applications are due Monday, January 3rd. The TAC will meet at the end of January to discuss those and come up with a prioritization that we recommend to the board. And I think the board will approve that maybe in February. So by February, we may know if we received any money or not, so. All right, moving on. So same thing, but in the other planning region. So wanting to request federal funds or submit a federal fund grant application to the 7W. So this covers all of the rural parts of our county. And this is another application that I've submitted in the past and been unsuccessful. CASA 2. CASA 2 is, once again, it's identified in our construction plan. Currently, it's 2025 as a reconstruction. Although in our 5-year plan, I do not have enough funds to construct it even in 2025. We could really use some federal funds to complete that. So yeah, I'd like to submit a grant application. Once again, I submitted it last year, and I think the year before. This will be the 3rd round and been unsuccessful to get that. It's an expensive project just because it's so long. We would reconstruct it basically from the ramp at Highway 10 over to CASA 1. At CASA 1 over to Highway 25, it has already been reconstructed. It has wide gravel shoulders today. We would do a full depth reclamation like we're doing on CASA 3. We could skip the part that goes through the lake because we reconstructed that 2 years ago. But the remainder of it really does need to be reconstructed. We've seen traffic volumes increase dramatically in recent years. It's a narrow roadway. It's only 9 tons. We couldn't even overlay it to get it to 10 tons because we'd have to put too much structure on it, and it would really make the slopes really steep and dangerous. It kind of forces us to reconstruct it, and it hasn't been reconstructed since the original grading in the 60s.
Okay. Chris, will that make a difference being we have, basically the part through the swamp or the, little rock, that we got that done when you're?
Yeah, I will write that into the application and maybe demonstrate that we've taken steps to try to come along on this project. My grant application, this CASA 2 carries as much traffic as Trunk Highway 25 in this area. So that's kind of my argument too. It's functioning more like a trunk highway instead of a county highway in this location.
Part of that had to do when the county completed the overpass in Rice. It's so easy to come off and take that right-hand turn and get on 2.
Yep.
Before they had to take a right and take a left.
I do think maybe they're trying to avoid Royalton on Highway 10, so it's kind of a bypass. That's what we've seen. We've seen a lot of truck traffic increase on this section of roadway.
I hear from people that live on there that, they've been out there 15 years and they go, right now we'd reassess whether we'd live on this road or not with the truck traffic that's on it.
Mr. Chair, Chris, how much was done at the lake there at that time? Just like a half-mile stretch?
Yeah,
or
we've got
quarter
about a
mile?
half mile
Okay.
when you add it up on either side of the bridge that's been reconstructed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Before and after the creek through there.
Yes, correct.
Chris, what are I'm just looking at a few obstacles or one we might have. What, do you got a priority on which it would be a better project? I'm just thinking outside the box because I know there's one individual that's on both of these committees from another neighboring county. I don't know if he would support both projects.
Well, interestingly enough, APO is a different group. We wouldn't be competing against ourselves. So I'd like to think this is a different little pot of money
Okay.
that we could. You're right. That may come in. Some bias may come in. Is Benton County getting too much money? And we'll kind of address this during commissioner concerns. There was a big talk about equity and how that federal money gets dispersed equitably amongst the counties. It is tough. It's tough for us to get money in our federal or in our rural areas. We did receive federal money. I applied in 2020 to receive 2024 funds for CASA 7. That was $2.5 million. That some of them may look at it that Benton County received $2.5 million a couple years ago, and I'm requesting almost that much. The problem is our projects are long rural construction. They're expensive projects as opposed to, 1 mile of urban, which may be the same cost. They can show that they're got a lot more traffic volumes. They're making ADA improvements, sidewalk connections, those kind of things.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll admit it's going to be tough to get funding. yeah, I gotta try, I feel like. I
Yeah,
feel like I gotta
absolutely.
try.
No, I appreciate, I just wanted to kind of bring that out and,
So somewhat strategic again, too. It's a expensive project. You take out, it's 5 miles long of reconstruction. You take out the half mile that we've already reconstructed, we're still looking at $4.8 million probably of construction costs when you project it out to 2026. You know, that the 7W every year gets about $3.2 million. If I requested the full 80%, that would be all the money to Sherburne, Stearns, Benton, the cities of Monticello, Elk River, all those cities. So I'm trying to maybe come into that group of saying, okay, I don't want to take all your money. I'm requesting $2 million of that, maybe about 60% of my project cost, when 80% of it could be eligible. So I'm trying to be strategic and ask for some federal money, but.
yep.
Then our backup is trying to get it from the state if we can't get it from the feds.
Our backup, well, yeah, good point. Already, I would propose pushing it. So even though it's identified in our 5-year plans of 2025, I'm in one way or another already saying, well, we're gonna have to push that to 2026 and hope we get federal money. If we don't get federal money, then we hope for other grant programs like LRIP. Or do we look at our 5-year plan and do we not do another state aid project and throw more state aid money towards this roadway? So, once again, this application is due January 3rd as well, as just like the APO. Hopefully February, March timeframe, I'll know if we're successful, which why it kicks off our discussion of our 5-year plan at that point.
Mr. Chair, I think that reiterates our explanation of our 5-year road plan that we were gonna review it yearly because of these situations, so.
It really does affect it. So if it's like, oh, we gotta push that into that new 5th year, or do we need to reorganize to make something else happen?
Chris, how much, I mean, I know the road from 78 to County Road 1 is really bad. How much life does that have in it before we have to do something?
Well, if we don't, we may be looking at doing spot maintenance patching, which has happened already. It's a patched together road currently.
Is this one of our highest traffic count roads that needs to be done?
It is, yeah. It's a higher volume, not the highest, but the way it's growing is what we try to look at. We try to anticipate, as fast as things are growing, the current condition, how fast is it going to deteriorate where it's becoming a constant maintenance or safety concern with potholing and those kind of things.
Mr. Chair, I think that, I mean, we need to highlight that in the grant because one of the things you said earlier is it's a lot of truck traffic coming off of 10, getting probably around the Royalton area. I think we need to highlight that's what's really helping deteriorate this road rapidly.
I believe so, because it's being used as a 10-ton road when it wasn't, the base below it wasn't constructed at that, 60 years ago. Almost 70 years ago probably now. Now that we're in the 2020s.
Okay,
All right, Mr. Chair, I'll move for submittal of the Region 7W tip solicitation for CASA 2 reconstruction for possible federal funding and consider resolutions for local match funding.
I'll second.
motion been made and seconded to solicit 7W. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Commissioner meeting updates?
Mr. Chair, I can start. I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I got nothing.
So I had 3 meetings. I could only attend one because of what you're seeing here. It was the Shack meeting. We talked a lot about what we talked about at the AMC conference. We had a guest speaker that highlighted some points. The first point was you're going into talking to people or a group of individuals, you keep it brief, you go to the point and let them ask the questions. Don't give them a lot of information at first, just hit the highlight. Second of all was be a decent human being. You can take that however you want, of course. And third of all was, use plain language. Make sure that everybody understands it. And then we also did talk a lot about the same thing we talked at the committee of the whole with the human services, so I won't go into that anymore.
Okay.
So, thank you. That's it.
All right, I'll go next, try to keep it very brief. Commissioner Kapinski and I and Monty attended a virtual meeting with Chris Kenichi with
Oh, yeah,
Finley
thank you.
Engineering to discuss our next steps for writing grant proposals with the ARPA money and hopefully prepare an RFI for the county to publish. Hopefully, we're gonna see 2 to 6 proposals from some of the providers and get going on our broadband program. Also, TRICAP, we had a executive meeting, finance committee meeting. They are with, like everyone else, with a lot of staff vacancies, bus drivers, dispatchers. They do not have a transportation lead. They're out of a director of finance. They're out of a director of transportation. So they need some employees. Energy assistance, they touched briefly, a lot of delays, especially with furnaces. They can't get furnaces for the people that need them, so. That's been a struggle. Weatherization, because there's nobody necessarily managing that program day to day, the executive director stepped into that role to fill that again. They're trying to do 4 to 5 audits per week, and they've set a budget of $195,000 for 2022 for weatherization. They're also waiting 7 new buses that they've purchased. They're not showing up. Volunteer driver program, I thought this was kind of an important highlight. They're very short of drivers. There are only 14 volunteer drivers right now for TRICAP. So they're extremely short. Chris maybe will touch some more on the 7W transportation virtual meeting that him and I attended. Again, and you guys are all aware of this, of the 2022 through 25 projects for this district. Highway 23, of course, in Foley from Broadway to, I believe, 1,000 feet east of 13th Avenue here in town. Will be completely reconstructed, and then from that point on to the Rum River in Malacca will be also done. And also, just a reminder, there will be a new roundabout put in at Penn Street there by Mr. Jim's at the same time. So looking forward to that project to get going. That's all I have.
Commissioner Schlangen?
Okay, I was on the, Transportation Alliance Committee, and they talked about, they had, MnDOT has 56% of their funding, working with water, bridges, broadband, cybersecurity. And Charles Zelli gave a Met Council update for sustainability, working on the rail, the orange line, the rapid line with the transit. And working on their funds for matches. They have a rural support group that's working on morale and marketing, how to distribute everything. Then I was on the quarterly business report with the local business group through the St. Cloud area.
Oh, that was with King Banyan?
Yeah. 2% profit section is up. Unemployment is at 2.5%. Labor force in the area is down almost 2%. And there's less than 2,000 jobs in the, loss of 2,000 jobs in the last 12 months. Pilgrim's Pride is increasing their business. Walters is down. Real estate's normalized. And then they talked about the population increase. We've had a 6.8% population increase. The baby boomers are retiring, or there's been a lot of COVID deaths. So the workforce is hurting basically because of that. Wages are increasing, but there's there's increased difficulty with qualified workers. So, let's see what else we got. Capital expenses were kind of fluctuating, but they're now going up. There's still problems with elder and child care. Some of the people are working one day from home. 40% are not at home. 44%. 1 in 5 people are willing to work from home. About 39% are hybrid and do both. Coleman was closing in Sauk Rapids with 170 workers. So, and there's, inflation is expected to go up. And I think that was it.
That
for
was
me.
it?
And I was on the TRICAP too, but.
I didn't have anything that was reportable in the last week, so. Commissioner concerns?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I want to bring up, everyone take a look at their committee assignments for the next coming year. Because there will be changes, because some of them I sit on, they've asked for changes.
Okay.
So just everyone take a look at their committee assignments before January, because we'll be doing that.
And that listing will be in your January 4th board packets, you bet. The latest one will be in that packet, and we set aside ample time at your January 4th meeting for that discussion, you bet.
Great,
Yep.
thanks.
Mr. Chair, I have one, not necessarily concern, but basically a request. After multiple emails and discussions with Monty, Nadine, our county attorney, I'd like to have the full board support and just calling a quick meeting with Monty and Nadine and Phil. Commissioner Kapinski, I know, has been involved with this. If we could just get together and hash out and talk about some procedural differences with the IFS system at the county. And I really don't want to go into more details than that, but I just think it's something that we need to get together and
Do you
talk
wanna
about.
Update him on.
I did not update him on that, but I support that as well, so.
So do you want to do this at a board meeting or?
I would prefer, if it's okay with the full board, maybe Commissioner Kapinski and myself can set up a time to meet with Phil and Monty and Nadine, and we can have a meeting.
Okay,
You bet. Yep.
Okay.
I support that too.
yep, I'll support that.
So I think maybe if it's possible, Monty, if we could get 2 or 3 potential dates, that would
Yep.
work.
Yeah, if I heard correctly, I know Nadine has suggested we invite Phil too, so I need to check with his calendar.
Yep.
Yep, got a bunch of calendars to check.
Yeah, yeah.
To get some potential dates back, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Mr. Chair, I have kind of a, not really concern, but also, can we make sure that in the future, if there's gonna be any changes or something, a procedural change, that it doesn't come from somebody that is exiting a position?
I hear you, and in an ideal world, that wouldn't happen.
Yep, I think we need to make sure that we put something down that says, yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
When you're kind
moving,
of at the best time to. change
Yeah.
that stuff.
yep, exactly.
Great idea.
Yep, I agree with that one too.
Okay.
I think it should be like a status quo order.
Yep.
It's kind of a labor attorney term.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
sure.
Status quo order, like, okay, no changes in the last month.
Yep,
Yep,
exactly.
Exactly, especially large changes.
Yeah.
Great idea. Any other commissioner concerns? Set committee of the holes?
Come on,
new.
we're at the end of the year. We shouldn't
Wow.
have anything.
We got
between
nothing.
now and
We got nothing.
Got anything for December? If not, we
Beth?
adjourn.
Okay,
Okay.
look for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. We have, Economic Development Authority meeting
Yep.
and,
An EDA and a ditch.
and a
Yeah.
ditch.
You leaving?
I'm gonna leave, so I'm gonna turn it over to Commissioner
Commissioner
Heinen.
Heinen, could we take a 2-minute recess, please?
We'll be taking a recess, 2-minute recess.
That's totally fine.
You adjourn county board though, right? So we're.
Yes.
Yep, we already
Take a
adjourned.
short break, okay,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then did you see the email, Tim, about getting together?
yeah, I did.
Commissioner Schlangen.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Pop. Commissioner Kapinski.
Here.
Commissioner Heinen.
Here. Is there anything to add to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carries. Number 4, amend the minutes, approve or amend the minutes to the September 7th, 2021 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve those minutes from December 14th of 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? I abstain because I was not there for that meeting. Carries. 5, consider Eugene and Paul Properties LLC microloan extension. Amanda.
We are going to start out with the easiest one.
Okay,
So,
so
good
we're
morning,
gonna do-
Commissioners.
Good morning.
So, on March 15th, 2016, the Benton County EDA approved a $250,000 microloan with a 5-year balloon to Eugene and Paul Properties, also known as Silt Sock here in Foley. The loan proceeds were used to construct their 60,000 square foot manufacturing facility, and they've been paying the loan pursuant to the county's terms and the loan agreement over the past 5 years. Technically, it balloons this month, and they're requesting a 2-year extension to their loan. And this is typical, especially if they're, working on, they're actually working on different plans on their facility right now. So there may be changes in the next 2 years, but they want to continue making these payments to the county. And the bank that they currently finance all of their stuff with can't meet the terms and of our existing loan. So therefore, they've asked for a 2-year extension. The benefits to the county is that increases the amount of interest that goes back into our revolving loan fund over the next 2 years. The downfall of it is it reduces the amount of money that's available for us to lend out. So there's pros and cons to doing a 2-year extension, but knowing that they can't, meet the exact terms. I mean, these are favorable terms for the company right now, and they're just requesting a 2-year extension. The loan committee actually met and reviewed their request on November 8th. Their financials look strong, healthy, good. They are going to be set up to pay off this loan in 2 years. So everything aside, everything stays the same, the interest rate, the payment amount. We're just extending the term by 2 more years.
Mr. Chair, I'd just share also that Commissioner Pop shared that he, I believe, sits on the Finance Committee and said that this project was well vetted out, so he has no issues with it. So with that, I'd make a motion to approve a 2-year loan extension for the Eugene and Paul Properties LLC and to authorize the execution of loan documents by the county administrator.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Consider the Midas Trucking Incorporation microloan request.
So a few documents here for you to take a look at. In your packets, you have a request from Larry and Susan Midas, owners of Midas Trucking. They are actually seeking to purchase Jansen Trucking, which is a existing company in Benton County, just in Royalton, actually, but located in Benton County. They specialize in freight trucking and currently operate 18 tractors and 65 trailers. I'm sorry, Jansen, that's a different project.
Yeah,
Jansen Trucking
it
is
is.
located in
Lake.
Sauk Rapids.
Maybe
Well, which
New
project's
Lake,
going on
actually.
this one? Sorry.
Meadow Lake.
So they currently operate 18 tractors and 65 trailers. Their primary business is hauling wood and cabinetry products for a local company here in Benton County. In addition to that, they also act as a sawdust disposal vendor for a local company. They have 27 dedicated trailers for this specific sawdust work. With this loan, they are looking at retaining 20 existing employees with an average hourly wage of $28.85 an hour, which is an excellent wage. They aim to add at least 2 additional employees within the next 2 years. They are, I did receive confirmation from Roxanne that they are in compliance with any local and zoning and ordinances within the county. So they are seeking a $125,000 microloan to assist in the financing and the purchase of their existing business of Jansen Trucking. This would be amortized over 30 years with a 5-year balloon at a rate of 4.3%. The applicant, of course, is responsible for any of the application fees. We take care of that on our end now. And then also with any recording fees or legal documents fees. So that is not on the county to take on that cost. So what I'm looking for, well, actually, a couple things. I put the loan documents in here. We drafted these loan documents. I used an attorney out of Minneapolis that I'm very familiar with, that I've used before, and I really like how she puts together these loan docs. They're very clear, concise. We have your loan agreement, we have your security agreement. The security on the loan is a blanket lien on the equipment, personal guarantees. We are participating not only with their lead lender, but also the Initiative Foundation is contributing $175,000 to this project as form of gap financing, and then, of course, the county at $125,000. And I broke those percentages out, and I can kind of give you an idea what that is. So the total project cost is $2.8 million. They are seeking that in SBA 7A financing. 150, well, actually, we backed it up a little bit. So 175,000 from the Initiative Foundation, which is roughly about 4%, $50,000 in seller financing, 125,000 in revolving loan fund, and 350,000 in owner equity. To kind of, give you kind of an idea what that total project cost is, or made up of. So, with that, like I said, I have the loan agreements in front of you. One thing that I noticed in the loan agreement that I wanted to bring to your attention is, item number 25, under the Business Subsidy Act, there was a small, administrative error in this. So on page 17, it should say the 2 new jobs shall be created within the 2-year anniversary date of the closing of the loan or the benefit date. That was the only administrative error that I found when I'm reviewing these documents.
Mr. Chair, Amanda, quick question. What stuck out to me a little bit was a 30-year amortization. Now, obviously, that makes a very low payment.
Yes.
So is that typical for a 30? I realize it balloons in 5 years, but a 30-year am on this small amount of dollars.
Yeah, we've gone anywhere historically from 20 to 30, 25 to 30. I think the bank was comfortable and the applicant was comfortable with the payment at the 30-year am, knowing that it balloons in 5 years.
Okay.
It's just keeping their overall payment low.
Sure.
For the first 5 years.
Right.
Correct, yeah. So, thanks for the clarification, because I was gonna ask you about the, Midas aims to add 2 new. I mean,
Yes.
That was the request, so.
Yep, so that is just administrative error in the
Right.
loan docs, and we'll fix that.
But that clarified it for me, though, so thank you for that.
Yep.
Any further questions for Amanda?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the Midas Trucking microloan request with the noted clerical change.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Are we taking this in 2 motions, or are you going to also include execution of the loan documents by the county administrator? Or is it all in 1 motion?
That would all be in one motion that I had planned.
Okay.
I'm
I just
okay on
wanted
that.
clarification.
Yep.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes.
Mr. Chair, just one clarification for Beth, probably. I understand I probably approved the minutes from December 14th, and I meant to say September 7th, I believe.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Okay, anything else in front of us?
Nope, I just wanted to let you know that, that brings our, revolving loan fund balance down, we have $432,089 in there. So with this request, it would bring that loan balance, or the cash balance available to $307,089.24 as of November 30th.
Okay,
So
great.
I just wanted to let you know that there's still funds
There's still
available.
Sure.
And we may have one or two more.
Just gonna ask you that.
One or two more
Great.
applications coming. It's been a very busy month. And then, the other, note that I just want to make and for the commissioners is that we are working on updating the business subsidy policy. It's old and
Yeah.
it needs to be updated. The wages are much lower than I'd like to see, moving forward, just in the, the base of the business subsidy language that we have currently for the county. So the business subsidy policy is the overarching policy for all of our, policies within the county. So that covers our revolving loan fund, our tax abatement, our tax increment financing. So it's kind of like that umbrella policy, and then we're working on updating the other policies as well. Just kind of clarifying things, updating things, making sure everything meets business subsidy law. So you'll see those in a public hearing in the next month or so. So I just wanted to give you a heads up.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that information. Greatly appreciated. Anything
Motion
else
to-
in front of the board? Tip,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
got a motion, a second, to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, 10:49. Is everybody ready to move on to the next one? We'll call to order the Benton County Ditch Authority. Is there anything to add to the agenda than what's in front of us?
I have nothing to add, no.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Approve or amend the minutes of Tuesday, December 14th.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Number 4, update on the status of redetermination of benefits. Chris.
All right, so we embarked on this process about a year ago to have the remainder of our ditches go through this redetermination of benefits process. Some of them were as the result of work that we had already started. Others were as a result of petitions we received. We did receive a benefit of cost by combining all of them. Just kind of foreseeing that once we do one, there's going to be multiples after it. I wanted to call attention to 2 specific ditches that propose some unique challenges. The first one here is County Ditch 3. We did receive a repair petition. So either way, we would have had to gone through this, whether we decided to do it without a repair petition or not. We did receive a valid petition to repair this ditch. This ditch is in Sauk Rapids, County Ditch 3, beginning and then ends at Highway 10 and then continues in some storm sewer piping to eventually get to the Mississippi River. This ditch is acting more as like an urban stormwater collection system as opposed to a rural agricultural drainage ditch. So it kind of forced the viewers to look at it a little bit differently. As you can already surmise, there's a lot of parcels in here in a small watershed. As they looked at what was contributing to the drainage, it came out that, and then assessing benefit value to those different entities, it turns out the municipalities of St. Cloud and Sauk Rapids have most of the benefit. When you look at the neighboring parcels, drain off of their land, or if you think of a rural residential or an urban residential lot, water drains off of their lawn into the street, is collected by the street storm sewer, then their street storm sewers empty out into this ditch. So, moving forward, I brought that attention to the attention of Michelle. We're kind of looking at it and see if there's what's the best way to move forward with this. If it's more of an urban stormwater collection system versus a rural, is the County Ditch Authority the most appropriate entity to be managing this.
Way
So-
to put us two on the spot.
Yeah. It's just the nature of it. There was a landowner that owns land that his land that he sits on today was one of the lands that was potentially or was originally benefited and paid assessments for it when it was constructed back in the early 1900s, when this was more farmland and there was very few residents in this area. So it kind of forced us to look at that. Then it came to, well, we couldn't do a repair that exceeded the cost of the benefits, which, 115 years ago barely allows us to get a piece of equipment moved to the property. So we would have had to go through this process anyway. Verified that it's kind of interesting. So the watershed, we're saying this dark line is the watershed. Anything outside of this dark line drains away from the ditch. But all these lands here contribute to the drainage. But I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, well, up here, there's a lot of streets that collect before it's not draining over land to get to the ditch like you would in rural areas. So nothing we need to take an action on today. Just wanted to make you aware, we're still looking at procedurally the best way to proceed with this ditch.
Mr. Chair, sorry.
I'll get to you in a minute, Commissioner Johnson. This is my request to you, Chris. When we do this ditch cleanup from Dieters all the way to Highway 10, you take trees on both sides of this ditch. Because there's a lot of deadfall in that area. You know that area
Yep.
very well too. We will need to take trees on both sides of this ditch for cleanup, just for clarification.
Sure.
And of course, you'll be in contact with the city of Sauk Rapids then about all of this?
Oh, yes. There's two big reasons why. Because downstream, it's all their responsibility
It is.
already today.
Yep.
And if they're on the hook potentially for some assessments, they need to be made aware of it. I guess maybe a consolation is it's a relatively short length
Stretch.
of ditch.
Yep.
When we completed the initial repair plans last spring, we're estimating total project cost less than $200,000. Spread over all these landowners, the assessments are relatively low. But a big chunk of that is going to the city of Sauk Rapids and St. Cloud. When you think about how do they make their budgets work, a lot of times, if this was a street project, they would assess that onto the storm sewer costs onto the adjacent landowners anyway. So, an interesting thing. If you have a landowner that could get assessed because they have a small assessment, and then the city turns around and has to assess them for storm sewer costs, it could come across as being doubly assessed.
Hence
for
why we're on the hook.
yeah.
Commissioner Johnson?
Chris, I know you talked about it a little bit here, but do counties vacate county ditches? And is that an option?
Under 103E, which is the group of statutes that govern ditches, there is processes in statute that allows ditch authorities to abandon a system. The interesting thing is, to abandon it completely, it requires a petition by 25% of the landowners to do that. So it's chicken and egg thing. If we say now all these landowners are now benefiting from this ditch, we may have to go through the process of accepting, having a hearing on the viewer's report, accepting that viewer's report and saying all these people are now benefited, kind of putting it out there into the world that there's a process to abandon it. Is there 25% of these landowners interested in doing that? We're also looking at municipal law and some other things. Is there a process that allows the drainage authority to transfer that to a different drainage authority? And there's all kinds of things that come up with that.
So how long do you foresee this holding up the repair of this ditch?
A couple months maybe.
Okay.
I'll get into that next on the kind of the timeline for doing this.
Okay.
Does the city of Sauk Rapids know this yet? or-
No, I wanted to. This information came out in like the last week or so, so I wanted to hit the board up first to kind of put you on notice.
They do know that we're gonna clean this ditch and tell you that.
Yeah, because they were dealing with the downstream part of it. My concern is you get assessed on the ditch side from the county, and then you could get assessed on the other
City
side from
side.
the city side. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one assessment is fine, but you start getting assessed twice for the same thing.
That's why I think at the county level, we kind of have opinion. Maybe it's better served as a local municipality administering this. But
If that's the case, Chris, do we vacate then?
we do. Maybe that may be the best course of action. But how do we do that
But
procedurally?
does that eliminate St. Cloud out of the picture?
That's what complicates this, I think, because St. Cloud has some streets in the area too that contribute to the drainage of that. So are we looking at a JPA situation maybe? We're creating are we going to have to create a new entity, a new drainage authority in this area to manage this ditch?
Chris, do we have any other ditches that run into ditch 3? Because then that would create another issue though.
Not public drainage systems. There are some streams and some private ditches, if you will,
Okay.
that kind of drain into it.
Okay.
I mean, likewise, Benton County, since we have County Road 74 and 75
Yep.
and Mayhew Lake Road, we have an assessment that we'd be on the hook for because our road drains into that ditch as well. So it may, we're still looking at it. It may lead us to some kind of JPA kind of thing. I'm not sure.
But a vacate's on the table to be discussed.
It could be, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
All right, the next ditch that required some special attention, it's kind of outside the normal, is ditch 10. Maybe we've talked about this before, but when we started looking, or the viewers started looking at the data, it was learned that this ditch 10, which is also Mayhew Creek, has a very narrow and tall, if you will, watershed that extends all the way up to the Morrison County border. That's what's denoted by this dark line. And this color map is kind of elevation. So makes sense. Upstream, higher elevations towards the north, lower elevations to the south. And I think maybe we all know there's a lake right in smack dab in the middle of this watershed. So if you recall, several months back, I brought forward a consideration that we need to do some additional engineering work to look at this lake. And basically it comes down to time. If rain falls from the sky, water falls from the sky, lands on your property, does it get to that ditch within 24 hours? And that's kind of what the viewers, what I'm learning, viewers learn or use to determine if you receive a benefit. If it takes longer than 24 hours, maybe the benefit is so negligible you don't receive a benefit from that ditch. So they needed to have some engineering work. And that's what it got into. When we got down to the nitty gritty, the viewers, that was starting to dive into engineering work that the ditch engineer is required to provide to the viewers to make that value determination. Because viewers are all more like assessors. They're determining value. They're not supposed to be determining engineering, things like that. So I ended up having Houston Engineering look at this. And I think what we learned is that some of these in the upper part of the watershed, since that lake has an outfall structure, it stays pretty much the same elevation all the time, which is near that top elevation. Some landowners north of that lake, their water does get to ditch 10 within 24 hours and therefore receive a benefit. Obviously not as much as a benefit as those closer and downstream of the lake. But that's just something to be aware of, that there's going to be landowners that are not going to perceive it that way and are definitely going to have some questions that they're going to say, hey, our water goes into that lake. It doesn't benefit from that ditch. I think the benefit of having a company like H2 Overviewers, that burden is kind of on them as a part of their viewers report to show and demonstrate that. So that leads me to my next point of discussion.
We've had some very heated discussions in the past about ditches.
Oh, I'll
So
bet.
get ready for this.
That-
Get ready for it.
So in the last week, I've received these viewers reports that has all the landowner names on it, their acreage, a legal description of their property, the value of the benefits that's being assessed to them. We're pretty close to being final. The next step would be to have a landowner meeting with the viewers. So they'll get a notice in the mail with this statement that says what their property is and the value that's being assessed to it. It may have potential assessment costs, and the viewers typically assume a nice even number like $100,000, or if it's a large ditch, maybe $500,000 repair project, and accordingly what their assessment would be. According to the viewers, once we get to a point where we're like, yep, these viewers' reports are good, they're ready to send out, they would like 3 weeks after that time for the date of the landowner meeting. That gives them time. Our contract with them is they print off those reports, address labels, and mail them out, pay for the postage and things like that. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of mailings that is on them and not staff at the county doing. That's why they would like 3 weeks. Then they have this landowner meeting where they're talking about their method and their process to the individual landowner. So it's not a county ditch meeting. You guys don't need to be there, but you'd be welcome to come. And then after that, they would like 10 days to 2 weeks after those landowner meetings before we actually have the hearing. Because the purpose of those landowner meetings is landowners to speak up and say, hey, I know you think that my water drains this way, but say in the last 10 years I put drain tile in it and I actually have the outlet going over here, which could affect their value. So then they want some time to go back and correct those reports, and then have a hearing on that, where the ditch authority would actually accept the viewers' reports, and that kind of locks in what the future assessments would be. I shouldn't say locks in. It determines their value, and then we use that apportionment to determine what their assessments would be. With that being said, that puts us into February before we could have those hearings.
And then that puts us into the following year of redoing ditch cleanup then.
I think we could still do some ditches we're not gonna get to all of them in 2022, but we could certainly start on, namely, I'd like to do 6. We could probably get to 3 since it's a shorter ditch. Plans shouldn't take too long to complete on that.
Commissioner Johnson?
Chris, I recall our discussion with Houston, I believe, that's the one where we talked about in their contract additional hourly charges for engineering.
Yeah.
Did they keep you abreast at all where they may potentially be at so far on this extra engineering with with County Ditch 10?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that. I mean, this extra engineering, it was about $2,000 worth of.
2,000?
Yes.
Okay, so it stayed at that number. It hasn't, because we've seen the 2,000 before.
Yeah, we haven't come in higher than that.
All right,
So,
yep, thank
Good.
you.
Good question.
All right.
So, just for information, no action now, but, yeah, the information's starting to come in, so I'm sharing it.
Good deal. You have anything else in front of us, Chris, for this?
I do not.
No culverts?
And I would motion to adjourn, except I was wondering if Chris would just entertain us with a very brief 7W update meeting. He touched on that before, if this is
Sure.
the appropriate spot, or if you'd like to adjourn out and have him do that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Yeah, so the
No, that's fine.
7W policy board meeting was just December 17th. It was online. Yeah, a lot of technical data was shared at that. And a lot of it's centered around the discussion of equity. And so even among us engineers, we've had some good discussions, let's say, on how to dole out equity. And there's actually was some confusion. In the past, it was kind of based on when was the last time that you received federal funds. And if you kind of recall our resolutions, we're in 2021, actually 2022 is when the applications are due for 2026 money, 4 years out. So there was some confusion on how that was kind of maybe being applied. Was it the year that you got awarded? For example, was it 2022 that you were awarded, or when you actually received it, 2026? And how recent was that? And then there were some in the engineering group that kind of believed, well, equity should really only come in if we have like a tie project. We have two projects that are very technically equal, providing about the same benefit to the public. Can we use equity as a tiebreaker, as opposed to be quite honest, I kind of rely on equity to bring some of my projects up to be more equal with some of these urban development projects. So that was put on MnDOT staff to kind of look at that. And so they kind of brought in some data from the recent census, population change, kind of equate that to a term we use, vehicle miles traveled, and kind of see if there's a better way of doing equity. So we've got a new method for doing equity, and it's the year that you was awarded. So for our example, 7W, CASA 7, we were awarded that money in 2020. We're 2 years out. I think that puts me in like a medium category for equity. We'll see how that shakes out with the rest of my technical aspects of the project. So that was a lot of discussion of how they kind of arrived at that. There was a lot of technical. They're trying to keep biases out of it and trying to use, and that's kind of the goal of the technical advisory committee. All of us engineers trying to use technical data to prioritize projects that go to the policy board to actually approve that or award federal money to those projects. So that was a big chunk of the first part of that meeting, is how to get to those that equity piece. There was a brief update of the federal infrastructure program, the IIJA. I think we were still learning about things. We're still learning about things there. A lot of, even our federal delegation likes to talk about $4.5 billion to Minnesota over the next 5 years. Couple things. $3.5 billion was already the base funding that we were receiving, would have been the base funding. So only about $1 billion more over the next 5 years is new money. The second piece of that is the IIJA is just an authorization bill that gives the federal government permission to spend that money. The federal government still needs to pass a budget that allocates the money to all these new programs, which hasn't happened yet, won't happen until February when that continuing resolution expires. And then it gets very political. That's the Build Back Better program that nobody, even within own parties, they can't agree on. So I guess I'm just trying to temper that. Everybody is excited for this big federal bill. I don't anticipate any increasing funding coming anytime soon. So that was touched on that 7W meeting. They're also going through a long-range transportation plan update. They hired a consultant, Bolton and Mink, to help come up with, in ATP3 7W, what are some kind of projects we should be looking at over the next, I think this is like a 40-year plan. What should our transportation system look like in the next 40 years? So there was an update on where that process is. I think that's kind of the highlights.
Just one very quick additional thing. Commissioner Persky from Stearns brought up the fact of, 7W ends at the Benton County line. And so we need to make sure we're looking forward and talking to 7E in regards to the long-term plan for 4-lane to Malacca and beyond. So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
thank you, Chris. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.